If you're looking for a cheaper phone alternative, Google's Pixel 3a and Motorola's Moto G7 are hands down two of your best options.
Both phones cost half as much as their high-end rivals, but have a lot of the same features as a premium phone.
So which one should you get?
Well, that's why we're here. We're comparing the Pixel 3a
and the Moto G7.
The Moto G7 wins when it comes to price. It costs $300 compared to the $400 Pixel, although you can probably find some deals for both by now.
It also takes the crown for screen size. The Moto G7 has a 6.2-inch LCD display, while the Pixel 3a has a 5.6-inch display, but this one is OLED.
And both have a fingerprint scanner on the back, and they still have a headphone jack. So when we're thinking about design, the thing that I like about the Pixel 3a is the same thing that I like about the Pixel 3, which is it's small, it's lightweight, and it's really comfortable to hold. So that has ported over, and I really like that about this phone. Of course, if you want a bigger phone, the Pixel 3a XL has a 6-inch screen, so if this is like you want something bigger, you could always go for that model. But I really like that it's lightweight, and the new color is purple with this little green accent. I think that's super cute. But compared to the Moto G7, it doesn't look as sleek and cool. It actually kind of does, feel a little cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with you about the purplish and the green button. I am kind of jealous of that now that I'm looking at it in your hands. But I think for most people, aside from us, Lynn, I think they are gonna like the sleeker look of the G7. It's glass on either side. It's really thin, and it's got some nice curvature to the glass that makes it look cool. It's also got this almost edge-to-edge display. That said, I am not the most careful when it comes to phones. So it does worry me a little bit because of all the curves and stuff. It does seem to be more prone to slip out of my hand, and because it does have glass on either side, I would be more comfortable using the Pixel with the plastic, but I can't say that the screen would fare any better because it doesn't even have Gorilla Glass. It's using another kind of glass. It's supposed to be durable as well, but we haven't tested it, so I have no idea. If, however, you're more prone to spills than drops, then Moto G7 is your phone because at least it's not water resistant or waterproof by any means, but it's got some kind of water repellent at least, so you're a little bit covered.
Another design difference between these two is that the Pixel 3a has an OLED display while the Moto G7 has an LCD screen. And because of that, colors are just a little bit more vibrant on the Pixel 3a. Colors like blue and purple just pop out a lot more. And the blacks are really inky, and it looks really good. And color shift, the color shift is more severe on the Moto G7, so when you kind of angle the display at different angles, you can see that it gets a little bit more washed out compared to the Pixel 3a. So the screen just looks a little bit better on the Pixel 3a, but again, I can only see it when I hold both phones side by side.
I also, worth noting that I prefer this dewdrop notch than the bars on the top and on the bottom. That's me.
The Pixel 3a has a single 12.2 megapixel camera on the back, while the G7 has two cameras, one 12 megapixel camera and a 5 megapixel depth camera.
And both phones have an 8 megapixel selfie camera on the front. If I had come into this having never tried the camera on the Pixel, I think the G7 would have done a good enough job in terms of the camera for most shots. And it almost keeps up when it comes to ideal lighting conditions, if you're shooting landscapes, for example, during the day. When it starts to get tricky is when you try to do fancier things.
Yeah, and that's when the Pixel 3a really shines. Because it has the same camera as the Pixel 3, you'll have all those high-end features, including low light shooting, which they call night sight, and it basically works like you could see in the dark. It works so well. And there's also HDR Enhanced Plus, which handles tricky exposures and lightings and renders really good even lit photos. There's also digital zoom, which works really well. The Moto G7 zoom is garbage, like I wouldn't even try to use it.
I wasn't a huge fan of video on the Pixel, but the G7 makes it look good almost. Because even looking at them side by side, it almost seemed like the G7 was gonna take this one until I took them off the phone and I realized they were kind of all tricks to make me think that the video was better. And what it does is that it does saturate the video more, and it does kind of increase the contrast to the point where you think it looks sharper, and then you see it on another screen and you realize that it is just kind of masking the fact that it doesn't look quite as crisp as the Pixel. The other thing I noticed about video on the G7 is that it's much shakier than on the Pixel, and this is because it doesn't have optical image stabilization, which does make a huge difference. You'll notice that the video on the Pixel is so much smoother. This also makes a huge difference for night shots, both for video and for stills. For night video, for example, it just looks so grainy and so noisy and dark in comparison to the Pixel. That said, there is a workaround, and that is if you download the Google Cam APK. It's a little trick that our colleague Patrick Holland gave me that I didn't even know existed, and it basically transfers all the software magic from the Pixel camera onto the G7 camera, and it vastly improves the quality of the pictures. Doesn't get it to the level of the Pixel, because it obviously doesn't have the hardware to go along with it, but I would definitely recommend it if you get the G7.
Both phones have a 3 ampere-hour battery, but the Pixel lasted 3.5 hours longer during our testing, where we played video on a continuous loop in airplane mode. They also both have fast charging, but neither offers wireless charging.
And the Pixel 3a has an advantage when it comes to the processor because it is slightly faster than the one on the Moto G7.
So when we tested both phones, the Pixel 3a comfortably beat the Moto G7 on all 4 benchmark tests.
And this is again one of those things that you may not notice unless you have both phones side by side. And once we did, and we started doing a few tests, like pretty simple tests, like opening and closing apps, testing out the shutter speed of the camera, that's when you do start noticing a difference.
Another thing to keep in mind is that Google actually re-optimized the OS on the Pixel 3a so it could work better with the Snapdragon 670 processor. So it feels as snappy and feels as smooth as the Pixel 3.
In terms of software, there isn't a lot to say because they're both running Android Pie, although you're probably going to get the Android Q update a lot faster than the Moto G7, and I'm going to be waiting for another year or two probably.
Well, that's correct because Google said that they were going to roll out Android Q at the end of the summer for the Pixel 3a. Another thing about these two phones is that we're usually not huge fans of phone companies and the UI that they layer on top of Android, but the good news about Google and Motorola is that their UI is very close to stock Android. Then again, if you're not a fan of either of these phones' takes, you can always download a third-party launcher.
Honestly, it didn't bother me that much. It was just, the only thing that bothered me was the little Motorola jingle. They love to put it everywhere. Honestly, you look at this phone and it plays the Motorola jingle. That said, the things I do like about it are things like the little quick action to activate the camera where you just shake the phone. That's kind of nice. And I also like the always on display that makes me feel like a magician. I just gloss over it and it tells me the time. And that helps to not smudge the screen because as you can see, it's already a CSI crime scene over here. So the less I can touch the phone, the better.
Well, one cool thing that the Pixel 3a has is that it has AR walking navigation in Google Maps, which is really cool because you could immediately orient yourself when you're starting walking directions. And if you're like me and I have terrible sense of direction, that helps me know where I'm going right off the bat. That being said, it's not an exclusive Pixel 3a feature. It is rolling out to other Android phones, so it doesn't make it special, but it is the first phone to have it out of the box.
It is going to be special for the next at least year or so until this one gets it. The other thing I forgot to mention, Lynn, about the features, and you definitely don't have that, is expandable storage. We both have 64 gigs of memory, but the G7 has the option to expand it. So if you like to keep photos or anything on your phone, then this is your phone.
Right, and the Pixel 3a does have cloud storage, but unlike the Pixel 3 phone, you can't save photos in original quality. You can only save it in high quality, which the language isn't very clear, but it's not as good as original quality.
All right, Lynn, it's crunch time. We have to pick a winner. Which one would you choose?
Well, the Moto G7 is $300 and it is our favorite budget phone of the year. It also has expandable memory, which is important if you take lots of photos and video. But it's not as fast as the Pixel 3a and its camera isn't as good. So unless you're on a really tight budget, I would pay $100 more for the Pixel 3a.
I would have to agree with you, mainly because of that better camera, but that's because it's priority for me, and for a lot of you it's not. And I do think that the Moto G7 is the better bang for your buck phone, all in all, and it does have a better design, and it does help that it's slightly water resistant.
Right, so if price is important to you, keep in mind that both these phones have been deeply discounted throughout the year, and the Pixel 3a will probably be even cheaper once the Pixel 4 rolls around sometime in October.
And at that point, we're gonna have to come back here and do another one of these versus, so definitely stay tuned for that. And let us know what else you'd like to see us compare in the comments section below. Until then, we'll see you next time.